Hello, and welcome back to another chapter of the FNP Intense Review. Today we're talking about Chapter 28, Nursing Research, Sources of Data, Primary Sources which are preferred. In research, primary sources are preferred. They are research from which the data originated. Primary sources are factual and not subject to interpretation by others. Secondary sources. Secondary sources are created when the original data, primary data, are interpreted or analyzed by another person, not the original researcher. These are second-hand accounts. So, an exam tip right away. Primary data are the preferred source in research, the original study that produced the data. Ethical issues in nursing research. Institutional review boards. An important duty of institutional review boards, or IRBs, is to ensure the rights, safety, and welfare of human research subjects who are participating in research studies in their institution, hospital, or clinic. According to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration guidelines, IRBs have the authority to approve or reject research proposals that are submitted to their institution or hospital. If an IRB member has a conflict of interest, they must recuse themselves from deliberation and abstain from voting. Its committee members. The members of the IRB committee are formally designated to review and monitor research that involves human subjects at their institution. The IRB members are individuals who are affiliated with the institution. Therefore, physicians, clinicians, or retail pharmacists who are not affiliated with the institution are generally not included in IRB committees, unless they are hired as a consultant. In addition, experienced staff members, not recent graduates, are preferred. The size of the IRB and the number of members depend on the type of institution. So, an exam tip. Know the definition of an IRB. The IRB's most important role is to protect the rights of the human subjects enrolled in the study. Vulnerable populations. Almost all types of biomedical and behavioral research in the U.S. require informed consent. Vulnerable populations require special protections and consent requirements, such as infants and children younger than 18 years of age, pregnant patients, fetuses, prisoners, refugees, ethnic minorities, a person with mental or physical disabilities, visual or hearing impairments, and persons who are economically disadvantaged. Belmont Report, a report that outlines the important ethical principles that should be followed when performing research that involves human subjects. The Belmont Report was issued by the National Commission for the Protection of Human Subjects of Biomedical and Behavioral Research. Tuskegee Syphilis Experiment. The Tuskegee experiment was an infamous study of 600 African American sharecroppers between 1932 to 1972 in Alabama. The men were all tested for syphilis infection, and those who had positive results were never informed or treated. Because of the study, laws were passed that protected human subjects' rights and mandated informed consent. Informed consent of human subjects. Research subjects must be informed that they have the right to withdraw from the research study at any time without adverse consequences or penalty. There are additional requirements for minors and vulnerable subjects. Describe the study, inform the subject of what they are expected to do, such as questionnaires and labs. Describe the risk or the discomforts of participating in the study, in the present and the future, if applicable. Describe the benefits of participating in the study in the present and the future, if applicable. Discuss the alternatives to the study. Allow enough time for subjects to ask questions. Discuss whether there is any compensation or reward for participation. Discuss how confidentiality and data will be secured to protect the subject's identity. Give the number and/or email address of the contact for the study so that the subject can contact that person if they have any concerns or problems with the study. Minors. Any person who is younger than 18 years of age. Emancipated minor criteria. Legal court document declaring that the minor is an emancipated minor. Active duty in the U.S. military, or legally binding marriages, or divorced from a legally binding marriage. Consent versus assent. Consent may be given only by individuals who are aged 18 years or older. A minor who is not emancipated, as young as the age of 7 years up to the age of 17, can give assent to participate in a research study, but cannot give consent legally. The child should be assured that they can withdraw from the study after discussing it with their parents. The parent or legal guardian must first consent to the minor's participation in the study. In addition to, the researcher needs parental permission to speak with the minor in order to obtain assent. The child signs a separate assent form. So, tips for the exam. Know which groups are considered vulnerable populations. Know the definition of assent. Assent, again, refers to minors because they legally cannot give consent unless they are emancipated. Research-related terms. Statistical significant, or the alphanumeric, also known as the significance level, or p-value. It is usually set at either p less than or greater to 0.5 or p less than 0.1. A significance level of p less than 0.05 means that there is a 5% chance probability that study results are due to chance. Significance level of p less than 0.1% means that there is only a 1% probability that the study results are due to chance. Therefore, an alpha of p less than 0.01 is better than an alpha of p less than 0.05. Your control group, which are subjects in an experiment who do not receive any treatment. N, this letter indicates the total size of the population. A small italics n, this letter indicates the number of subjects in the subpopulation. Significance level, also known as the alpha or the p-value. The p-value is usually set at either, again, that p of less than 0.05 or p less than 0.01. See additional explanations under the alpha rule. Research terms. Variables are any attribute or characteristics that varies and is measurable, such as an independent variable, which is a variable that is being manipulated and is used to influence the dependent variable. In experimental studies, the researcher has control over the independent variable. A dependent variable, this is the result of the manipulation of the independent variable. An example of this is manipulation by researcher. The independent variable allows a response to manipulation that can be observed and measured, such as the dependent variable. So, exam tips for this. Understanding the difference between a dependent and an independent variable. Know the definition of n, the total number of subjects versus the small letter n, the subgroup. A hypothesis. That is an idea or a supposition that can be tested and refuted. When conducting research, an examiner tests a hypothesis or several hypotheses and can either accept or refute the hypothesis. Null hypothesis, or H with the 0. This is the opposite of the hypothesis being studied. Examples of this is if the hypothesis is corn plants grow faster when exposed to sunlight, The null hypothesis would be corn plants will not grow faster when exposed to sunlight. If the research data met the set p-value, again that p less than 0.01, the results are considered significant, not due to random chance, and the null hypothesis can therefore be rejected. If the null hypothesis cannot be rejected, it means that there is no relationship between the variables, and the results are due to chance. A normal curve is a bell-shaped curve. Measures of distribution. The mean, also known as the average, calculated by adding all the scores together and dividing it by the total number of scores. So an example is 5, 5, 5, 10, 10 would equal to 35, which is divided by 5, which means the average is 7. Median, the number that is in the middle when values are arranged from lowest to highest in chronological order. So the example here is 1, 3, 4, 5, 7, 10, 14. The median value would be 5. Mode, the most common value or frequently occurring value in a set of scores. Again, an example would be 3, 5, 7, 7, 7, 8, 9, and 10, 10. Mode would be 7. The range, the difference between the largest and the smallest values in distribution. For example, 2, 3, 5, 7, 10, 15. So 15 minus 2 would be 13. The range would be 13. Research design. There's different types of studies. A prospective study, which is a studies done in the present to the future. Longitudinal studies are a type of prospective study. Data are obtained in the present and then periodically measured in the future. Retrospective, studies done on events that have already occurred, such as chart reviews, recall of events. Another name for this design study would be ex post facto. Longitudinal, long-term studies that follow the same group of subjects or cohorts over many years to observe, measure, and compare the same variables over time. These are observational studies with no manipulation or intervention. For example, the Framingham Heart Study has tracked the same research subjects, the N being 5,029, from the town of Framingham, Massachusetts. The goal is to study the development and identify the risk factors that are associated with the development of cerebrovascular disease. What is a cohort? Cohorts are simply groups of individuals that share some common characteristics, such as gender, age, job, ethnicity. Cohort studies are useful for studying the causative factors or risk factors of a disease. For example, Nurses' Health Study is a longitudinal cohort study that examined the effects of oral contraceptives use in nurses over the long term. It has been expanded to study the effects of lifestyle choices on health. Cross-sectional. A cross-sectional study compares differences and similarities between two or more groups of people or phenomena and collects data on one point in time. A case study is an in-depth investigation of a single person, group, or phenomenon. Descriptive. In these studies, researchers observe and collect pertinent information but do not manipulate or change the environment. These are also known as observational studies. Correlation, a type of observational study in which the interrelationships between at least two variables is evaluated. There are three types of correlations. A positive correlation, where two variables change together in the same direction. For example, when variable A increases, then variable B also increases. A negative correlation, an increase in one variable result and a decrease in the other. Again, when variable A increases, this causes variable B to decrease. And then no correlation, variables that are not related. An example is a change in variable A has zero effect on variable Variable B. Experimental. An important criterion is the use of random sampling and random assignment of research subjects. There is at least one control group and one or more intervention or treatment group. The manipulation. Causality can be determined. If A plus B occur, this will cause C. The quasi-experimental group, or design. A quasi-experimental is the design is similar to an experimental study, except there is no randomization of the research subjects. Instead, recruitment of subjects is by convenience sample. So, exam tips. Experimental studies use randomization with subject selection. Correlational studies search for relationships between a minimum of two variables. Deductive versus inductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning involves going from more general to more specific findings, also known as going from top-down logic. In research, this means starting with a theory, a generalization, and then narrowing it down by formulating specific hypotheses or deductions. Quantitative studies, Table 28.1, uses deductive reasoning. Inductive reasoning, the opposite of deductive reasoning, also known as bottom-up logic, involves going from specific findings to generalizations. One starts with a specific observation, and from these, one may detect a pattern that helps to formulate tentative hypotheses, which may help to generate new theory. Qualitative studies, again see Table 28.1, use inductive reasoning. So an exam tip, deductive logic is used with quantitative studies, and inductive logic is used in qualitative studies. Research progress or process. The phases of research process generally can be summarized as the following. Phase 1 is the conception. Formulate research problem or question. Review literature and develop a hypothesis. Phase 2 is the design and planning. Select research design, identify population sample, determine protocol methods, resource required, and ethical considerations. Prepare proposals and submit to IRB for approval. Phase 3. Implementation. Recruit participants, obtain consent, implement research design, and collect data. Phase 4. Analyze, organize, analyze, and interpret the data. And lastly, Phase 5. Dissemination. Prepare a final report. Publish and disseminate findings, such as journal articles, poster presentations, and lectures. Human genetic symbols. The exam may include questions about genetic symbols. Table 28.2. The symbol for the healthy male is an empty square, and for a deceased or affected male, it is a filled square. The symbol for a healthy female is an empty circle, and for the deceased or affected female, it is a filled-in circle. A diagonal dash across the symbol means that the person has died. Here are tables 20.1 and 2, so go ahead and hit pause if you need to review the qualitative versus quantitative studies, as well as genetic symbols. So, jumping right into the 5 questions. I hope you got your pen and paper ready, and we'll see how we do. Question 1. What is the best description of a variable? A. It is an important part of every research study. It is the probability that a factor is important for the research data. It is the value or number that occurs the most frequently. Or it is a condition, characteristic, or factor that is being measured. Question 2. The research symbol that is used to indicate the total population in a research study is a small letter n, a large letter N. A large letter P or alpha? Question 3. The most important job of an institutional review board, or IRB, is to A. Protect the interests of the hospital or research institution. B. Protect the right of the human subjects who participate in research done at the institution. C. Protect the researcher and the research team from litigation. Or D. Evaluate research protocols and methodology for appropriateness and safety. Question 4. Which of the following groups is classified as a vulnerable population and has additional protections as human subjects? A. People who are incarcerated. B. Parents of young children. C. Elderly people. Or D. Persons younger than 21 years of age. And last but not least, question 5. A dataset consists of the value 1, 1, 2, 4, and 7. When considering the set, what term describes the number 3? A. The mode. B. The median. C. The range. C. The mean. Or D. The range. So, I hope you locked your answers in. Let me know in the comments how you did, and we'll jump into the answers. Question 1 is D. It is a condition, characteristic, or factor that is being measured. Question 2, the answer was the large letter N. Question 3, B. Protect the rights of the human subject who participate in research done at the institution. Question 4, A. People who are incarcerated are the most vulnerable population. And question 5 was C, the mean. Alright, that's it for this chapter for today. I thank you as always for listening, and I'll see you at the next chapter. Till then, take care, and goodbye.